Hello.
Good evening, everyone. Karibuni sana. We are sorry for the slight hitch that we had. Tumeanza a bit late, but welcome everyone in today's live session, the deep dive series. We are having an amazing guest with us today, Wanjiru Mwangi, class of 2010. We are really excited to have you on board. And today's session is also a very, very trending topic and something that's also very sensitive in our time. We are talking about mental wellness today, and we are glad to have you, Wanjiro, with us. And because our time is a bit gone, we will just go straight into the introduction. So you can tell us a bit of a background about you, and also I saw that you also have sessions and where you're based and where people can meet you, and then we dive straight into the presentation. Karibu sana Wanjiro.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. You all had an amazing day. My name is Wanjiru Mwangi. I'm a clinical psychologist at One Hospital Group, which is at the Five Minute Health Hospital. That's where I'm based. I also do consultancy, uh, based in Lavington as well. It's an honor to join you all today as we have this conversation. As Marcia said, it's such a timely conversation. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, where we mainly, create awareness. We want to educate people on mental health. It's timely conversation, and I'm honored to be part of it. And I'm honored to take you, through mental health awareness. So we will get to learn a thing or two. I'm so sure you've heard about it, but we'll get to learn a thing or two, and it's an honor. I guess we can start with the presentation.
All right.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Sorry.
Yes, we can. We can say it.
Okay, okay, great. All right,
Hmm.
you can go ahead and begin, Wanjiro.
Hmm. Can you be able to put it on like slideshow?
Sorry,
Can you be able to put it on slideshow?
to move it up
Not to be on slideshow.
or not to be in slideshow. Okay,
Yeah, it's not on slideshow.
is it now on slideshow?
On my end, it's not on slideshow.
Okay, just a moment.
All right.
Maybe before we sort this out, you can maybe give us a bit of a background of how you started.
Oh, okay. So I've worked in two different settings. So I've worked in a clinical setting, and I've also worked in a rehabilitation center. So I've done a bachelor's degree in mental health, in psychology, sorry, and I've also done a postgraduate diploma in advanced mental health practices. So I've worked in a rehab program here, and currently I'm in a clinical setting. As I've mentioned, I'm working in the hospital, and I've been there for 2.5 years now. Mercy? can share the slide so that you can start the presentation. Mercy, you've muted yourself. We won't be able to hear you.
Okay, in case anyone can see our presentation, please let us know if you can see it on your end. Then we can go ahead and begin.
My end, I can't be able to say it. I don't know if the rest are able to see.
All right, please present from your notes and then I'll follow and
It's okay. It's okay. I can present, and then if we are able to share the slides later, we can share with the team because of time. Uh, so as I had mentioned before, today we are having a conversation on mental health. And the reason why I'm saying it's a conversation because I want us to engage. I want us to hear from each other. I want us to learn from each other. Mental health is something that has been, it's something that we've had. We have an idea what mental health is, maybe not into the nitty-gritty, to the details, and that's why we are having this conversation today. So first thing first, I would love for us to understand what is mental health. When you hear of mental health, what comes to mind, right? So mental health is more than an absence of a mental health condition, all right? So mental health, basically it focuses on different aspects of your life. So we're talking about your personal aspect, you're talking about psychological aspect, we're talking about social and emotional well-being, all right? So we're talking about personal, social, emotional, psychological well-being. All right. So mental health basically is just being in a place where you're able to maintain a successful mental activity. You're able to, undertake your day-to-day activities productively. All right. So you can be able to wake up and you can go to work, you can go to school, and you can be able to engage, productively while at it. Another thing is you're able to maintain, all right, you're able to maintain fulfilling relationships. All right. So that is what mental health is. Mental health is just being at a state where you're able to maintain uh, productive, mental health activity. You're able to maintain, fulfilling relationship. That is platonic and romantic relationships. All right. So the World Health Organization, it describes mental health as a state of, well-being, being at a place where you're able to, realize your own potential and you're able to, fulfill your daily obligations. All right, so that is what World Health Organization describes as mental health. All right. So now that we have an idea of what mental health is, the next big thing that I want us to understand is just some key facts about mental health. And I want us to slightly talk about the statistics. Yeah. So it's important to note that Kenya is ranked number 4 in African countries, a country that has high prevalence of mental health conditions. So 4 out of the 54 countries, all right? And of course, depression being the most prevalent mental health condition. So that is like 1.9 people, 1.9 million people in Kenya suffer from a mental health condition. The unfortunate thing is only 25% of that population is able to seek treatment. All right. So of course, there are various reasons or various factors why people are not able to seek treatment. One being in lack of awareness when they're going through, like they're having a mental health condition, they don't have the information. One is financial reasons, sometimes not being able to seek treatment. All right. And of course, a very familiar thing to all of us, stigma. There's a lot of stigma, when it comes to mental health in Kenya. So it's that only 25% of the population is able to seek, treatment. Is able to seek treatment. So there's something that we need to do about that. Also, the other unfortunate thing is in Kenya, in both public and private sector, we have a capacity of 1,600 bed capacity for inpatient mental health care. So you see, there is a lot. The need and the resource is not equivalent. So there's the resource, and also I'm talking about human resource as well, is wanting. So there's something that we need to do as we are having this conversation about mental health. Right. So another thing that we need to note, one among 4 people who walk into any, mental, not even mental, any health facility, one among 4 people have a mental health condition. So it goes to show that this is something that is very common, that is very familiar. All right. And the onset of most mental health condition is starts from around age, from childhood all the way into adolescence and of course adulthood as well. But you realize that it goes undetected and untreated, especially in adolescence. It will only be diagnosed when someone is like as an adult. All right. So the onset starts, it begins in childhood and it progresses to adolescence, but at that stage it's not detected and it's not treated. Then when you become like an adult, that's when like treatment starts. So you realize that mental illness, it peaks from age 18, and of course it significantly drops from around age 50. But something that we need to know, there's some mental health condition that peaks now late adulthood. We're talking about neurocognitive conditions. This is like the dementia, the Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, etc. All right. So yeah, that is just a small fact, about mental health. It is there, it is happening, and we have a few iconic people who have been very open about their struggles with mental health. And I think it's really important because it's giving people the courage and the confidence to talk about their struggles with mental health. To bring us closer home, in Kenya, we have one, Roman Chef, who is most of us are very familiar with him. So Roman Chef has talked, about his struggle with bipolar mood disorder. Another iconic person that, for those people that listen to pop music, Demi Lovato as well has spoken about his struggles, has struggled with mental health. So it's really important to see people of influence talking about their struggles, because now this gives, it makes other people comfortable to also talk about and vulnerable about their struggles with mental health. Yeah. So the next thing, now that we have an idea of what mental health is and some, key facts about, mental health and the state of mental health in our country, I want us to understand what is mental illness. Right. As I said, mental health is more than just an absence of, mental disorder. So when you talk about mental illness, what is that? All right. So mental illness is a condition, all right? Or mental disorder is a condition that affects, number one, your mood, it affects your thoughts, and it affects your behavior. All right. So it's a condition that affects your mood, your behavior, and your thoughts. All right. So mental illness, it occurs when your brain or part of your brain is not, functioning well, or it's not functioning as it's meant to function. So you realize that mental illness will cause mild to severe disturbances in your thoughts and in your behaviors. All right. Something that I would love for us to note is uh, once sometimes we can have some traits of mental illness. All right. So maybe sometimes you can feel sad, which is a common symptoms among people who are depressed. So you realize that sometimes you can have such symptoms, but you're able to get yourself out of that situation. So it becomes something, a symptoms become, or symptoms, a number of symptoms qualifies to be like a mental illness when it is persistent and when it is frequent and it is affecting your ability to function. All right, in your day-to-day activities. For example, you've been sad for like 2 weeks. You see, like 2 weeks, Monday to Monday, then another week, Monday to Monday, you're just sad. At that point, you can't just, it's just common sadness or just you sad. All right. So this is at this point now it qualifies to you seeking treatment, diagnosis being made. All right. So when you have some of these symptoms, the reason why I'm emphasizing on this is because we are in the era where we have information, and information is everywhere. You go to Dr. Google, you go to TikTok, and have all these mental health professionals and and they're sharing. Oh, sorry, I need to remove my video. Okay. All right. Anyway, let me continue. I was saying the reason why I'm emphasizing on us sometimes having symptoms of certain, disorder, but not meeting the criteria is because there's a lot of self-diagnosis. Yeah, someone will have like they'll feel sad and they'll use I'm depressed loosely. All right. So I hope you guys can hear me. I hope my connection is stable. Oh my Lord.
Much Gladys for confirming that you can hear. All right, I think we can proceed.
You must say.
I see like we are doing okay right now. We apologize for the hitches. I maybe proceed. Yeah, I hope you can now hear us. We are being told to end session says we are audible. So please continue.
Mercy, you've muted yourself. We can't hear.
Sorry, I said we can continue.
Okay.
They can
So
hear
where
you.
oh, you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
All right. All right. Okay. Let me just continue from mental illness. What mental illness is? That is what I was just defining, right? As I was saying, mental illness is a condition
Okay.
that affects your mood, your behavior, and your thought. All right. So mental disorder is a condition that affects your mood, your thought, and your behavior. Yeah. And mental illness occurs when your brain or part of your brain is not functioning well or is not functioning as it's meant to be. And this mental illness can cause mild to severe disturbances in your behavior and in your thoughts. All right. So, as I was saying, it's important for us to understand that for a diagnosis to be made, or for someone to say that they are having this mental condition, the symptoms that they're experiencing need to be persistent and they need to be frequent, and they need to be at a place where they are affecting your day-to-day functionality. All right. So if you're like a student, you can't be able to go to school. If you're like, employed, you can't be able to go to work because of the said symptoms. So if you experience like maybe sadness, but you're able to snap out of it, able to deal with it, at that point you can't qualify that as you having a mental disorder. At that point, it's more like a mental challenge that a mental health challenge that you're able to deal with, right? I'm saying this because I don't want us to be quick to self-diagnose ourselves, because right now we're in the era of information. When you have all this information, we're very quick to make the diagnosis. We are very quick to say I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have ADHD, I have OCD. It's very common. We're in that era where we are making, we are self-diagnosing ourselves. All right. So at least the symptoms that you're experiencing need to be persistent, they need to be frequent, and they need to affect, your day-to-day functionality. All right. So the next thing that I want us to look into is the types of mental illnesses. All right. I've just named a few, but in the DSM, which is a diagnostic manual, which is used by clinicians to for reference when they're making a diagnosis, we have over 300 mental health conditions. All right, or mental health illnesses. But for today, I want us to focus on the most common conditions. All right. Some of them we've heard about them, we know something about it, or we've had someone, we know someone who has them. So I want us to focus on there are like a number, like seven of them, seven most common mental health illnesses. So number one is depression. As I mentioned earlier, depression is the most common mental health disorder in Kenya, and of course, I believe even in Africa as well. So for depression, depression is when an individual is having persistent or intense feelings of just sadness or being low. All right. So this person is feeling very low. They're feeling, worthless. They're feeling hopeless. They're not motivated. They're having suicidal ideations or homicidal ideations as well. Their sleep pattern has been, is disturbed. So they're either oversleeping or they're undersleeping. So it's either hypersomnia or insomnia. We find that they also have, change in appetite. So they're either eating too much or eating too little. All right. So the appetite has been affected. They've gained weight or they've lost a lot of weight in a short span of time. All right. So these symptoms need to be at least the person need to experience the same symptom for at least 2 weeks for that diagnosis to be made. Right? When you're feeling sad, you're feeling worthless, you're feeling hopeless, you're having suicidal ideations, you're having your sleep is disturbed, your appetite is is affected as well. There is, you've gained weight or you've lost weight. Yeah. So that is when someone can go to a professional and a diagnosis of depression can be made. All right. So when you're talking about anxiety, anxiety is whereby an individual experiences intense fear or worry or feeling overwhelmed. All right. And in this case, most time anxiety will display physical symptoms as well. So you'll find that someone is, hyperventilating, they're shaking, they're having like the heart is racing, they're sweating a lot. Yeah. There's just like some physical discomfort when someone is having like anxiety. We have different forms of anxiety. We have like generalized anxiety where, you know, you are your anxiety is triggered by general things, all right, not a specific thing. Then we have a social anxiety, whereby an individual feel anxious when they're like in a social setting, especially in unfamiliar setting. All right. We also have separation anxiety. This is very common amongst kids, but kids, but it's also very prevalent among adults, and I feel we don't talk a lot about it. But this is where, like, when a child is being separated from the immediate caregivers, they'll feel uh they'll feel like, anxious. They'll, have a tantrum. They'll cry because they don't want to be separated, from their loved one. Separation anxiety is also very prevalent among adults with, anxious attachment style as well. That's what I was saying. It is also prevalent among adults, but I feel focus is paid much amongst kids. But it's also adults suffer from separation anxiety as well. Those are some different forms of anxiety. Then we have the third mental illness, which is schizophrenia. All right. So when you're talking about schizophrenia is whereby an individual has a distorted idea of reality. All right. They're very disconnected from reality. So an individual will experience these four symptoms. So they're going to be having hallucination. That is one. Delusions, disorganized behavior, and disorganized speech. All right. So there is hallucination, there is delusions, there is disorganized behavior, and disorganized speech. Clinically, we call them positive symptoms. All right. So this, maybe just to explain in a bit when you talk about hallucinations and delusions, because sometimes a person might not experience all the different forms of hallucinations. When you're talking about hallucination, how best to understand it is using the five senses. All right. So someone might see things, or might hear things, might feel things, might taste, or might smell things that are not there. All right. So for them, they can hear someone talking to them. We call them audio hallucination. They can see things that are, they're not there, but they can see them. They can feel things, maybe in their body, in their skin. They can feel like something is, crawling on them. They can taste something, maybe like a metallic taste, or maybe it's just something very unpleasant. Or they can smell things. All right. So that is on hallucination, the different forms of hallucination. So it doesn't mean that someone with schizophrenia has to have all, the five types of hallucination. It will be even one. The other thing is on delusion. So delusion basically means having like a strong belief, and it's a belief that can't be challenged by a fact. Even when I present a fact, you can't challenge that thought. Right? It's a distorted thought. Yeah, and we have also different types of delusion, but I'll just mention just three common types of delusions. Number one being persecutory delusions, where someone believes that someone is out there to harm them or kill them. So someone is convinced that, what, maybe a certain family member or colleagues is out there to kill me or harm me, and it's not informed by anything. All right. So it's just a belief they have. So we call them persecutory delusions. All right. The other one is grandiose delusion. This is where someone believes like they have superpowers. All right. They're like, I'm God, I'm Jesus, they're just, out of this world. They're like next level. Yeah. They have inflated self of sense of belonging. All right. And the other type of delusion is erotomania. So erotomania is where someone believes that someone is in love with them. All right, especially someone of influence. You'll say, like, for example, Beyonce or Rihanna, or whoever, Obama, is in love with you, and you even go to the extent of texting this person. All right, you finding them on social media and texting because you believe, they're in love with you. So we call that erotomania delusion. And a fun fact, erotomania delusion is highly prevalent among the female gender, or people assigned the female gender at birth. All right. So those are the different forms of delusion. There are just three, but we have other forms of delusion. So someone with schizophrenia will have those, symptoms. They'll have hallucination, as I mentioned. It could be different types, the five of them. It could be, they could be having delusions as well. They could be having disorganized behavior, disorganized speech. So be having a conversation with them, but it's not coherent. So you'll say something, then they will say something that is completely out of context. All right. Yeah. In layman's language, this is what people call, this person is. I know these are very stigmatizing language, which we are trying to tell people to avoid using, but this is people will call this cheesy. No, that's the language that people use, which we're trying to educate people and tell them to not use. But these are the symptoms that someone with schizophrenia will display. So schizophrenia can be managed with medication and with therapy as well. So they are put on like antipsychotics and of course with therapy as well once they are stable. The other mental health condition that I want us to look into today is alcohol use disorder. Yes, alcohol use disorder is categorized as a mental health disorder. You remember how I mentioned that a mental illness, it's a condition that affects your mood, your behavior, and your thought. So when there's someone is using alcohol like on a day to day, even when they're aware of the negative impact of the alcohol, at this point we can qualify that as in someone having like an alcohol use disorder. All right. There are different stages of alcohol use disorder. The first stage is at risk stage. So normally at risk stage is whereby an individual or you'll use it for like social use, just grab some things after work, or maybe you're using it to self-medicate. I've said, at risk. So you're predisposing yourself to having a alcohol use disorder. All right. As much as yes, it's social use, but you're predisposing yourself. All right. The next stage is early alcohol use disorder stage. All right. At this point, you realize that now you stopped drinking with friends. Now you're drinking alone, and most time maybe you're doing it in secret. You don't want people to know that you're drinking. So you stopped using it with people. Now using alone. Maybe after work you'll just go. I need to go and grab one beer before I go home. All right. Or maybe after class. Grab, then go home, and you're doing it in secret. At this point, you started to build on the tolerance. All right. So if you're using like one beer now, for you to achieve the same high or the same feeling, you're using like two beers. All right. So this is at the early alcohol use disorder stage. Then you go to the next level, which is like mid level. All right. So mid level is whereby an individual is preoccupied with the thoughts of alcohol. All right. So at this point, they're neglecting other important aspects of their life. If it's like their finances, they don't care about their finances if it's being affected, about their physical and mental health, about their relationship, about their work. So you'll find that they're missing work. All right. They're missing work and they don't put much care into it. So at this point, you can also be able to detect like organ damage through like lab test and of course scans. Once maybe someone visits like a health facility, at this stage you can be able to detect a certain level of organ damage. Yeah. And to what extent. Then we have the last stage, which is the end stage of alcohol use disorder. So at this point, you're drinking Monday to Monday. All right. Nothing else preoccupies your mind. It's just alcohol. All right. And at this point, of course, your health has been affected drastically. Yeah, your organs have been affected. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe you've lost your health, physical health as well has been affected. So this is like end stage of alcohol use disorder. But the good news is, even at this stage, you can be able to get help. So you go to like health facility, and you go through detox, and then after that you can be taken through like rehabilitation program. All right. Yes. So that is on alcohol use disorder. So the other disorder that I want us to focus on is on eating disorder. I want us to talk about three different kinds of eating disorders. I know we've heard about this or we've read about it. Then the first one is anorexia. right? So anorexia is where you find that an individual is regulating or limiting the amount of food intake, and this mainly is because of the obsessive thoughts on like their body image. Maybe they have an issue with their self-esteem, so of course they regulate or they limit the amount of food that they take. All right, that is anorexia. The other one is bulimia nervosa. So bulimia nervosa is where someone will binge eat. So they will eat a lot. They will have a heavy breakfast, lunch, even snack, like they're just binge eating. All right. And sometimes they will do that, then they will like induce vomit, then eat again. All right. So that is on bulimia nervosa. Then the other form of eating disorder is what we call pica. All right, PICA, pica. So pica is whereby you find an individual is consuming non-food items. This can be less harmful, not unless the person is consuming like dangerous stuff. Yeah, so this is why you find that people eating soil, they're eating like the stones, the kind of the stones that the pregnant women eat. Yeah, there is also people who eat clothes. Like someone will just be eating clothes, they'll take a handkerchief and they'll start eating. All right. And of course, there is another one that someone will eat like poop, feces, fecal matter. Yeah. So at that point, of course, that is a bit dangerous because it can cause harmful effect their to their health. Right. So those are the three different forms of eating disorder. You have anorexia, we have bulimia, and we have pica. The other disorder that I want us to just briefly talk about is on post-traumatic stress disorder, or what most of us, PTSD. All right. So PTSD is a condition that a person experiences after going through a very traumatic, experience or event. All right, and the event can be life-threatening. It could be an event that poses, a challenge, or to your mental and physical and emotional well-being. Right. So someone who's going through PTSD, they'll display these symptoms. Number one, they'll be very hyper vigilant. All right. So they'll be like easily startled. All right. So they'll be very hyper vigilant. They'll be very anxious. They'll be having flashbacks of the traumatic event. They'll also be having nightmares. They'll be having negative thoughts, a lot of negative thoughts, and something that is also very common among people with PTSD is emotional dysregulation, especially with like negative emotion, because they feel these negative emotions intensely. They're not able to regulate the emotions. All right. So there is, as I mentioned, there is flashbacks, there is nightmares, there is anxiety. Someone becomes very hypervigilant, and also, someone also avoids the environment that maybe triggered the traumatic event. So if something happened maybe in your workplace that traumatized you, find yourself that you're avoiding that environment. All right, because when you're in that environment, you can even have like a panic attack, right? When you remember of what happened. So those are some of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and it happens after a traumatic event. Of course, there is treatment for that. It can be managed through medication, and also depending on the severity, medication and a lot of intensive therapy as well, just to help the person, process the trauma, what happened, and to be able to just move past that event. All right. Yeah. So that is on post-traumatic stress disorder. The other and the last disorder that I want us to talk about is on attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. All right. I feel this is very common, and we've all heard about it, and also there's a lot of diagnosing that is happening when it comes to like ADHD. So ADHD has basically three main symptoms. For you to best understand ADHD, just understand these three symptoms. So someone who has ADHD, they have issues with attention. So they have inattention, So they struggle with just concentrating on a task, all right? So average concentration span for adults is between 8 to 20 minutes, but you find that someone is struggling to even concentrate for the 8 minutes. So they're easily distracted. So if it's like at work, they can't concentrate on their, on their task. Small distraction and their mind is elsewhere, right? Especially on things that they are less interested in. But now a defense mechanism to counter the inattention or lack of focus is hyper focusing on things that they're interested in. When for the things that they're quite interested in, but you'll find them now putting, too much, focus. It can be a positive thing, it can be a negative thing. A positive thing because now it will help them like focus on their interest and be able to, maybe carry out a task, a project. It can be a negative thing when now their only focus is on one thing and they don't think about anything else. All right, so they neglect other aspects of their lives. All right, so that is symptom number one, inattention. All right, the other one is hyperactivity. So you find that people with ADHD, they struggle with just staying still. Right, they're very hyper, they're very restless, they're up and down. They keep on talking. It's someone that, when you're having a conversation, they can just blurt out anything or interrupt conversations. All right, because they can't wait for their turn. They speak before their turn. All right, and they're, of course, like I said, very restless. The other symptom is impulsivity. All right, so they don't take time to rationalize things. So they operate on instant gratification. So if they want something, they will get it. They won't take a minute to think if this it's a positive thing or it's a negative thing. They will just do it. All right, so they don't understand the aspect of delayed gratification. uh, and ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning that its onset is mainly in childhood. So it starts in childhood, and sometimes the diagnosis is made when they are still, as children. But sometimes you realize that, as we mentioned before, because of the challenge of, people lacking awareness, people can people like diagnosis can be made quite late, like in adulthood, all right? But it's there. So for ADHD, for you to best understand ADHD, just check the three symptoms. So inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. All right. So now that we have an idea of what mental illness is and some of the mental illnesses, the common mental illnesses is, the next thing that I want us to understand is what are the warning signs? What are some of the early warning signs? What can you look out for? With yourself, maybe with a loved one, with your kids, with your siblings, your family members. Have you noticed them display some of these symptoms that sometimes could be an indicator that maybe their mental health is depleted and maybe they need to seek help or support for that? Right? The first symptom will be, are, are you experiencing like intense feeling of sadness? And it's okay to feel sad. Like I mentioned, it's okay for you to experience the negative, symptoms or emotions. But when it gets to a point where it's very intense and you can't be able to snap out of it, it's just stop being sadness. All right. So are you experiencing sadness that you can't be able to snap out of it, and it has been very, consistent, maybe for like 2 weeks? All right, that is number one warning sign. Number two is, have you had thoughts of harming yourself or just ending your life? You feel very unmotivated, hopeless, just can't deal with whatever is going in your life, so you just want to harm yourself or to just end your own life, or you have plans to do it. So you have the ideation, you have the thought, and you've gotten to a point where you're thinking of executing it. All right. So the other warning sign is, are you engaging in risk taking behavior? All right, that predisposes you to, harming yourself or harming the people around you. For example, you drink and you drive and you're pretty drunk and you're driving, you don't care, and the consequences of that. I could get into an accident, but at that point you're like, you know what, I don't care. If it happens, it happens. Are you finding yourself in such a situation? Or do you find yourself thinking about harming, others, especially the people that you feel have hurt you in certain ways. All right. Are you having overwhelming fear? For no reason. You just wake up and you just feel an intense fear. All right. That sometimes, it could make you experience certain physical symptoms, like I'd mentioned before, like you're hyperventilating, you're sweating, you're shaking, you can't breathe properly, your heart is racing. Yeah, for no reason. You wake up, you just going about your day, and then you experience this intense fear. All right. Have you noticed any significant weight loss or weight gain within a short period of time? Have you noticed maybe you've lost 10 kgs and you're not working out or anything? You just lost 10 kgs maybe in like a month. All right. Have you also noticed that you've gained a lot of weight within, short span of time? Because sometimes you realize that we tend to stress eat when you're going through stressful situation. We stress eat, and of course, when you do that, we easily gain weight. All right. So the other warning sign is: are you seeing things? As I mentioned before about delusions and hallucination. Are you seeing things, hearing things, or believing things that are not real? It's just a distorted reality. You're saying things, but when you tell that they tell you they can't see those things, right? That is another, you know, one sign that to look out for. The other thing that you look out for: have you noticed that your intake of alcohol or maybe your drug of choice has increased? All right. So before you consume like maybe let's say 2 beers, now you're doing like 6 beers, and of course the frequency has increased as well, not just the quantity, but the frequency as well. So have you noticed that you're using alcohol or your drug of choice excessively? Have you also noticed that there's drastic mood changes? One moment you're very sad, the next moment you're happy, you have,
I see that we are all listening and following. Karibuni sana. I see you, James Minor. Karibu. She has dropped a bit, and we are trying to restore to bring her back online. Just to welcome everyone. Beatrice Wanjiru as well. Karibuni sana to the session. This session will be recorded on YouTube, so we can as well, join in and watch the replay. Just to try to bring her back online so that she can continue with the session. Asanteni sana for joining in. In case anyone has a question session, so that we're able to answer these questions much later after the session once she's done. And just to note that she will also leave her details after the session, so that if you would like to book a session with her, she can help you go either for yourself or even for someone who you'd like to book in a session with. We can be able to connect with her for the session. her private sessions as well. Um, I will just try and bring her back on now so that she can continue. Asanteni for bearing with us with the hitches that we've had. Yes, sorry about that. Tutaelewa ni mambo na internet. If you're good to go, maybe you can continue with the session. Just let us know if you're good.
Yes, I am, and apologies, guys. I don't know what's happening with my Wi-Fi, but I'll try to. I'm trying to fix it. So I hope we can continue from where we left at.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I was just uh, describing some of the warning signs that you can look out for. And I was just, sharing with you. Have you also noticed that there's some, drastic mood changes that are affecting your behavior? Sometimes you extremely happy. You have high energy levels. The next moment you're low. You can't get out of bed. You can't do anything. You're just fatigued. You can't sleep. Your sleeping pattern has been affected. Have you also noticed that you're having extreme difficulty in concentrating? You can't stay still. It's like in your school work, you can't concentrate. If it's like in the lectures, you can't. You're easily distracted. At work, you can't concentrate on a task. Have you noticed that? Are you also having intense worries and fears? That's sometimes they affect how you go about your day-to-day life. Sometimes maybe you have this intense fear and you can't leave the house. You have this belief that maybe something is going to happen once you leave the house. All right, so are you experiencing some of these symptoms? It's important that you check in with yourself so that you're able to understand. You do a mental wellness check. I believe most time we are not very intentional about doing a mental wellness check-in, but it's important that we do that. Now that we are aware of some of the warning signs, the next thing that I want us to talk about is I want us to take a moment to introspect. All right, I want us to do a bit of self-introspection. So I want you to take this moment to think about some of these things that I'm going to name, and you tell me you okay, you'll check yourself if you've identified some of these symptoms. Have you noticed? Okay, have you noticed, or maybe someone that's around you experiencing the following symptoms? Are you withdrawing from friends, from family and colleagues? Right? So are you just completely isolating yourself? And I'm not talking about, that Saturday when you decide to unplug from everyone and just recharge. I'm talking about, taking days and weeks where you completely isolated yourself. All right? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that you're also avoiding activities that you would normally enjoy? All right, I'm talking about your interest, your hobbies. So if you enjoy, cooking, baking, doing art stuff, going for dance, or going out with your kids or with your partner, but you no longer have the energy to do all that. The thought of doing that is just physically and mentally exhausting. All right, so you no longer enjoy the things that you would enjoy before. Have you also noticed that you're either sleeping too much or sleeping too little? On average, an adult should get at least 6 hours of sleep. Yeah. Have you noticed that sleep has either you're sleeping for like 16 hours or 12 hours because you don't have the energy to get out of bed? Have you also noticed that maybe you're sleeping too little? Maybe you're sleeping like at 4, then at 5 you're up, you need to go to work, prepare, go to work. And it's because maybe you're struggling to fall asleep. So we're talking about hypersomnia and insomnia. So have you noticed that? Also, have you noticed feelings of hopelessness? Why you're very unmotivated? You're not looking forward to the next day. You feel, you're just surviving. You're not living, you're surviving. Have you noticed that? Have you also noticed that you're consistently feeling low energy? All right, you don't have the energy to do anything. So Monday to Monday, no energy. At home, at work, you don't have energy completely. All right. Have you also noticed that your intake of, substance or alcohol has increased as well? And it's like frequent, the quantity has increased and it's more frequent as well. All right. Are you displaying negative emotions? And remember, guys, I said it's okay for us to display the negative emotion. It's okay for us to be able to feel the negative emotion, but it gets to a point where it's very consistent, like you're sad throughout, all right? And of course, you're not able to snap out of it, and then you're ruminating on, the emotions. You're fueling the emotions. If you're feeling sad, you're doing things that are going to make you feel more sad. Yeah. Have you found yourself in that situation? Have you noticed that? Have you also noticed that maybe you are unable to complete your daily task? Maybe it's like going to work, taking care of your kids, you know, just organizing your house, even sometimes meeting up with friends. Are you unable to do some of those things because it's exhausting? A lot of it is just very exhausting. Have you also had thoughts of maybe causing physical harm to yourself or to others? Things of like self-harming. Have you thought about it? Yeah. So as I said, this is a moment of introspection. And of course, maybe we might not relate to some of these symptoms, but maybe we know someone who might, who's going through this. Yeah. Because we are creating awareness on mental health. I want us to be able to identify some of the, warning signs that you can look out for so that we are able to detect early so that someone can be able to get the support and the help that they need. All right. These are some of the basic things that, these are like day-to-day activities that, if we're very intentional and present with ourselves, we can be able to detect when, we are slowly slipping into mental health. Our mental health is being affected, right? So the next thing, now that we've done a bit of introspection, all right, I want us to understand what is the impact of mental health. Yeah. What is the impact of mental health problems or mental health conditions? So mental health has profound effects, and it doesn't just affect the person who is dealing with the condition or the mental health condition, but it affects families as well. It affects the society, the community as well. All right. And even in your workspaces, if you're having like a colleague who has a mental health condition, of course there's an impact, and there's an impact of having someone with such a condition. And it's important that we get to know this, these things, so that even when we're engaging with people with mental health condition, we come from a point of empathy. We treat them from a point of empathy, all right, because we have the understanding. So when it comes to like individual, impact, what are we looking into? What are some of the individual impacts? Number one, you realize that there is decreased quality of life. Yeah. If someone is, they're maybe going through depression, you realize that maybe even in terms of like their productivity, their output is little. All right. They're not able to live a full life in that moment when they're feeling depressed. All right. They're not able to, engage with other people. They're not able to go on their day-to-day activities. All right. So in this case, day-to-day quality of life is decreased. The other impact is on educational difficulties. You realize that when someone has like a mental health condition, they of course will struggle with just one concentration. Of course, when they lack concentration, they won't be able to give their level best when it comes to like education as well. And of course, for some people who have like learning disorder, we are talking about dyslexia and the likes, they'll have difficulties at school. Yeah, not unless they're supported and they're maybe given like a tutor, they'll have challenges with school as well. So educational difficulties for people who have like a mental health condition. The other one is lowered productivity. Of course, when someone is not feeling well mentally, they're not able to be productive. This is at work, you realize maybe the output is not as much. At home as well, you're not doing much, even the house chores. you'll find that you're not doing much. There's reduced productivity. And sometimes maybe if you're employed, unfortunately, which is against the law, because mental health is a basic human right, you realize that some people maybe they are fired, yeah. And when they're fired, now they can't even be able to take care of themselves. So they're at risk of poverty as well, because the income that they'll get before, it's no longer there. It's unfortunate, and we hope it's not happening, but also we can't say that it's entirely not happening, because it is, yeah. So that is an impact of mental health on an individual. The other impact is on social problems. So you'll find that you're having struggles with interacting with people. Yeah, you can't interact with people, or when you interact with people, you're just anxious, you're not comfortable, you're just socially awkward. All right. Yeah. And of course, you become very vulnerable to abuse. This is also very, very unfortunate. But you find that people sometimes they take advantage of people who are like having mental health conditions. All right. So when they have like mental health conditions, they'll abuse them. This could be any form of abuse. It could be physical abuse, it could be emotional abuse. Maybe when your partner has like a mental health condition, maybe they don't know how to support them through you know forms of emotional abuse could be present. There's also like sexual abuse. It's very unfortunate, but it's happening. So when you have like a mental health condition, so you become very vulnerable to abuse as well. The other impact is like additional health problems as well. So you'll find that someone is predisposed to like a physical health, problem. Sometimes it could be like issues with like hypertension, issues with Alzheimer's. You see, the fact that maybe you're worrying too much, you're predisposing yourself to having like ulcers and hypertension and the rest. And as I mentioned, of course, education will be compromised, especially if you're having like very severe struggles or very intensive struggles, like if you're having like a learning disability, of course your education will be very compromised, and you'll find that if they're not well supported, they won't be able to complete their education or to even pursue their career. But if they're supported, they can definitely be able to pursue their career. So that's on like individual impact or individual consequences of having like a mental health condition. So what about family or caregivers? Yeah, it is very, very physically and emotionally overwhelming to take care of someone with a mental health condition, especially when the severity level is high, right? So we have like mild, moderate, and severe. So we find for like patients with severe symptoms, they'll need like a caregiver, an immediate caregiver, someone who is around them. So it can be very physically and emotionally overwhelming for the family member or the relative taking care of this person. So sometimes you find that they have to quit their jobs to be able to take care of this person. If they need someone constantly around them, they'll have to maybe make that sacrifice. So if it was like a double income household, it's now like a single income household. So you realize that of course that will affect the family economically. All right. So also they're predisposed to like poverty as well, risk of poverty, because now you have to make a lot of financial readjustments as well. And of course, even taking care of someone with a mental health condition is expensive. They need to go for their reviews with the doctors. The medication as well is expensive. Yeah, so that is one way that another way that family can be affected when they have a family member with a mental health condition. And of course, because of the chronic stress or just the feeling of just being overwhelmed, if you're not able to manage or deal with that, they also are predisposed to having mental health condition as well. So we're talking about depression, we're talking about anxiety here. So if taking care of the mentally ill person becomes too overwhelming and they're not able to manage, or they don't have support or someone to talk to, they're also predisposed to having, a mental health condition. Yeah. So there's a lot of adjustments that needs to be done when you have like someone with a mental health condition. Sometimes you're talking about even parenting style, how you parent your kids. Sometimes you'll have to make adjustments. So that is, how the family is affected. Of course, when it comes to like occupation, in terms of output, in terms of, sometimes you find that they're absconding work, they're not reporting, their attitude towards the job is also, not very positive. Yeah. So that's how, occupational aspect is affected. So guys, the next thing is, what can be done? What can we do? When you're talking about mental health, we want to talk about, promotive, where we create awareness. We want to talk about preventative and curative treatment. All right. So promotive, preventative, and curative treatment. So we say prevention is better than cure. Yeah. So what can we do on a day-to-day basis to ensure that we're in a good, mental headspace, in a good, we are having like good mental well-being, right? And basically here we're talking about self-care. And the reason it's self-care, it's because the initiative has to come from you. That's it's self-care. So we have different aspects of self-care. We have physical self-care, we have, psychological and emotional self-care, we have social self-care, we have mental self-care, we have spiritual and professional self-care. All right. There's something that you can do every day to ensure that we are okay. And we're talking about exercising. Guys, I'm not talking about going to a gym and having a monthly subscription. Well and good if you can do that, but you can even start small, taking walks. If you normally use the lift, one day just decide, let me just take some stairs. All right. It's the simple things. Taking those regular exercise will boost, your mental well-being, and of course help in releasing happy hormones as well. Are you having a balanced diet? Do you hydrate? And when I'm talking about a balanced diet, I'm not talking about Sunday ndio unakula balanced diet, then Monday to Sunday you just eat whatever you want. It needs to be consistent, guys. It needs to be consistent. All right. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It's in the small things, your skuma, your ugali, and your mena, and you're good. Yeah. So ensure that you're consistent and you're eating a balanced diet, and of course you're hydrating. You stay hydrated. Are you having quality sleep? Yeah, I said average of 6 hours. Have you established like a sleep routine where you sleep at a certain time and you wake up at a certain time? Because you understand your schedule, you're able to come up with a with a routine. Do you have like some sleep hygiene activities that you do before you sleep? Like putting off your phone 1 hour before sleeping, taking a shower, for some meditating and yoga, that enhances the quality of your sleep. So it's really important for you to have like some of like your uh routine, some of the habits that you can do, or some of the routines that you can do before you sleep. It will help enhance your sleep. Are you doing relaxing activities? Do you go out and just do things that you love and you relax and you feel nice? Well, are you also having intentional rest? And I know as adults, it's very difficult for us to be intentional about this, but it's something that I would love for us to do. Let us be intentional about taking rest. Of course, there's a lot of responsibilities around us, but we also need to be intentional about our mental well-being, because if we are not, our body will speak. It will speak, and unfortunately, most time it won't be in the most healthy way. All right. Are we practicing gratitude? Are we practicing gratitude? Practicing gratitude helps us to have a positive mindset. All right. Things could be happening in your life, negative things, because it doesn't mean practicing gratitude, you assume that negative things are not happening. No, it means that even in the midst of those negative things, you can be able to identify a positive thing in your life. This will help you to have a positive mindset. All right. This is something that I'll also encourage us to do, to practice gratitude, even in the midst of the storms and the darkness in our life. Let's see, the goodness or the good things in our lives. Are you also able to challenge your negative thoughts, or you tend to ruminate on them? So when you're feeling, I am not enough, do you ruminate on the thought and you fuel the thought, or you challenge the thought? You get to a point where you're like, yes, this is how I feel, but how do I challenge this thought? Are we challenging, or we are ruminating on it? Yeah. Do you look out for positive social interactions? Yeah? Interactions that build you, interactions that nurture you, that there is value in those interactions. Do you do that? Because social interactions it's important. Yeah. We are social beings, so it's important for us to look out for positive social interactions. All right, so those are some of the simple things that we can do on a day-to-day that can help, impact our mental well-being in a positive way. All right. So the next thing that I would love for us to talk about is what are the treatment intervention. So what about when you I understand or you identify that I'm having these symptoms? What next for you? Of course, it's important for you to go and seek professional advice. We said we are not self-diagnosing ourselves, so go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You can be given medication by a psychiatrist, but this will depend on the severity of your symptoms. All right. If your symptoms are very severe, then you'll need medication for management purposes. You'll take medication at the same time you're doing therapy as well. And sometimes, if the symptoms are not as severe, they're more like mild, you could benefit from therapy alone, and maybe you wouldn't need medication as much. All right. So treatment intervention is, medication depending on the severity, and therapy as well. All right. Yes, and of course there is self-help. Like I told you, the small things. There's the self-care activities that you can do to just boost your mental well-being. All right. So guys, as we conclude this conversation, this has been really interesting, and I love the fact that we have this platform to talk about mental health. And thank you to the people who came up with this idea. It's important for us to engage in these conversations. Yeah. It's important for us to educate ourselves, because when we operate from a point of knowledge, we'll be able to be very self-aware of ourselves. And even when we know someone who has like a mental health condition, we can be able to treat them with empathy. All right. So let us educate ourselves when it comes to mental health. Let us be willing to learn about mental health. Let us also challenge stereotypes and avoid using stigmatizing language. Guys, there is an individual responsibility when it comes to like ending stigma, all right? And it's in small things like refraining from calling people cheesy. I know sometimes you say it so casually, but cheesy, you saying cheesy is what is making so many people from, seeking help because of the stigma that is there. So that's a challenge that I'm posing to all of us. When you see someone who is like mentally disturbed, just say they're mentally disturbed. Yeah? Let's stop using those stigmatizing languages. Let us be intentional about our mental health. Let us be present with ourselves. You see how we once in a while will go for like a physical wellness checkup. Let's also be intentional about our mental health. Go, see a therapist, even when you're feeling well. Yeah, we've talked about preventative treatment. Even when you're feeling well, just talk to a therapist to help you see how you can maintain that. All right. Yes, and let us normalize this conversation. Let us normalize mental health conversations. Let us talk, let us be vulnerable, of course, in spaces that we feel safe, and let us listen to other people with less judgment, but with a lot of empathy. All right. Yes. So I'm glad that we had this conversation, and I'm glad to be part of it. And thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Maybe not everything that I've mentioned today, but I hope you've been able to pick a thing or two that you can be able to help yourself or help the people around you. But something that I want you to take away from this is, let us be intentional. Yeah, like how you'll once in a while suffer from a cold, it's also how sometimes you'll suffer from mental health. But if you're able to be present to yourself, you can be able to detect it and seek support from it. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you for listening. Yeah, in case of any question, free to answer them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Wanjiro, for the amazing session. Thank you also for persevering and pushing on till the end despite the slight hitches that we had. We're glad to see people online, and well, I think people have been doing more of listening and taking notes. They don't seem to have a lot of questions, but we have one question from Keshi. This is our former secretary, Lucy. She's asking, how do you address cultural sensitivity and diversity in your practice? Maybe we can start with that. And I see she also had another question previously. We'll go back to that. Wanjiro, did you see the question?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
The question was, how do you address cultural sensitivity and diversity in your practice?
Oh, how to address cultural sensitivity and diversity. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Not quite clearly. There's a bit of
Hello.
an echo.
Okay. Hi. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, could you
Hi,
try
Nancy. Can you hear me?
repeating that again? The question and the answer again. Yes, we can.
Okay, let me just answer. I don't know if you can hear me. But on how we
We
address
can
cultural
hear you.
sensitivity and
We could
diversity.
hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Uh, One thing, of course, that we need to understand is we,
Yes.
we meet clients from different demographics, from different cultures, and it's very important for us to, as professionals, to be at a place where we are able to meet the needs of everyone, and of course, be very, aware of sensitivity surrounding the different people that we interact with. Uh, of course, when you're talking about diversity, another important element is inclusivity as well. So we try to be as inclusive. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Mm. Hello. So it's very important for us to, as professional, to educate ourselves, and of course to treat the different clients that we get to see from a point of information. All right. Yeah. So I guess I can answer the second question: how to help a client to set realistic therapy goals and to measure progress in therapy. I hope I got that right. So basically, how we help our clients to set goals. Number one, we start with what the client is presenting with. All right. So realize when a patient comes in or a client comes in for therapy, there are things that they come to address. All right, maybe they're having issues with stress management, or maybe having issues, conflicts, interpersonal conflicts with family. All right. So we help them first address that. And of course, the treatment plan, which is like a roadmap that, psychologists use to, in treatment, in therapeutic treatment. So they'll start with the presenting, what the client started presenting with. And of course, they'll modify it as you progress. All right. So if maybe by session 5, something comes up, then we'll modify the treatment plan. But how we make a treatment plan is based on what the patient is presenting with. And how we measure progress, of course, we do like frequent psychometric assessment. So if the first session we did like a psychometric assessment, maybe we tested for depression. After maybe a few therapy sessions, we'll do a repeat of the psychometric assessment so that you can see the severity of the symptoms. Has it increased? Has it reduced? Is it at the same place? From then on, we can be able to evaluate what is working, what is not. All right, based on how the patient or the client. Sorry, I'm using patient a lot because I work in a hospital, but based on how the client is, if the steps that they've made, right? So we normally do, the first thing that we normally do is we do like a repeat of the psychometrics, yeah, so that you can see the severity of the symptoms has reduced, and if they're able to use the coping skills that you've covered in therapy, yeah, because it's one thing for you to educate them on the different healthy coping skills, and it's another thing for them to be able to apply them. As we also look into that, are they able to apply the coping skills? And if not, what's the challenge?
All right. Thank you so much. We do have one last question. And the question is, how do you approach confidentiality and privacy concerns? Because I believe many people do not want to come out, I think, and of course, because of the stigma and a lot of other reasons why. So, how do you approach this?
So confidentiality is such a big thing in therapy. And in fact, it's an ethical principle where there is expectation whatever a client shares with you in therapy should stay between the two of you, not unless whatever the patient discloses can cause harm to themselves or cause harm to the people around you. In such a situation, you actually you inform the client that at this point you can actually break the confidentiality. All right, but not any other circumstances that can make someone to breach confidentiality. Yes, whatever is shared between the therapist and the client just remains there, not unless maybe it poses a threat or harm to the client and to the people around the client. Now, at that point, it's allowed for you to break confidentiality, or maybe it's information that is required in court and stuff. But of course, you need to if you need to break confidentiality, you also need to get consent from the patient as well.
All right. Thank you so much. I believe we've come to the end of our session today. Just to thank everyone else who tuned in. Thank you so much, Beatrice, who said she was looking forward to the session. I believe she's still here with us. Thank you so much also for the love hearts that we received from God, who also showed that he's with us. And your sister here also says, "Well done, proud big sister here." Thank you so much for the support, Beatrice. And to everyone else who joined in, karibuni sana, and thank you also for staying till the end. We can watch this session later in our YouTube channel. And for you to be able to reach Wanjiru, her contacts, her socials actually are on the screen as displayed. We can reach out if in case we have any more questions. And if we would also like to probably get to consult and look for a session where you can have a sitting with her. Asanteni sana because of your time, and that gets us to the end of the session today. Kwa hivyo, from my end is just to say have a lovely night, and let's exercise what we've just learned. Drink your water also and be free to talk about these things. Msikufe na hizi vitu because of what people might say. So thank you so much. Any parting shots before we end the session?
Mine is just to say thank you for giving me this opportunity just to have this conversation. As we had mentioned earlier, this was very timely, and I'm honored to be part of it. And I hope we're going to have even more conversation on mental health, because it's important that we keep having these conversations. So I loved and enjoyed doing this. So thank you for the opportunity.